Werewolf movies have always been a treat for horror movie fans. The fierce werewolf tearing apart humans, the blood, the gore, and the terrifying threat looming over people, all of these elements make a werewolf movie one of the most loved movie genres of all time. That's why in today's video we will talk about one of the most underrated classic horror movies, Cry of the Werewolf. But before we get started with the video, we have a small request for you. If you like our content, subscribe to us and like this video. It might be just a simple click for you, but it means a lot to us. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get started.
Is it good or bad?
The news is not good, my princess.
And out with it, Dawdler. Bad news.
Cry of the Werewolf, a bone-chilling journey into the heart of horror. The story of this movie is set in New Orleans in a museum called La Tour Museum, which is being run by Dr. Charles Morris. The movie starts with a dachshund named Peter gearing up to give a group a tour at the La Tour Museum. He takes the group through a bunch of artifacts and tells them everything about voodooism and vampirism. He claims that all of these artifacts and evidence were collected by Dr. Charles Morris, and all of them are real. In the end, Peter tells him about the mistress of this house that has been turned into a museum. Her name was Marie Latour, and she was a werewolf. During her prime, she was hunting the surroundings and killing the cattle and sheep. No one knew about her reality until one day her husband, George Latour, caught her. George followed the muddy footprints of an animal to Marie's room and confronted her. Upon confrontation, Marie killed George and fled through the window, never to be seen again. The room where she committed the heinous deed was kept untouched, and everything was just as it was when she lived there. After telling the story of Marie, Peter even introduces the audience to a portrait of Marie Latour. After the museum closes, the janitor of the museum meets Dr. Charles Morris to ask for his permission to leave early, and Charles agrees. Later, the janitor meets the princess of a gypsy tribe and tells her about Charles' plans to write a book revealing everything he knows about Marie Latour. Here, it is revealed that this princess, Celeste Latour, is the daughter of Marie Latour. Celeste is determined to protect her family's secrets and is willing to go to any lengths to stop Charles Morris. Later, Princess Celeste arrives at the Latour Museum under the guise of being an attendee of the museum tour. But instead of going with the crowd, she splits from them, visits the room of Marie Latour, opens the door to a secret cabinet, and enters it. After the last tour finishes, Elsa, the receptionist, asks Dr. Morris if he's coming with her to pick up his son Bob, but Charles claims that he has some work and asks Elsa to go alone. Elsa does as she's told, and after Elsa leaves, Charles enters the same secret basement in Marie's room. Once inside the basement, Charles Morris is attacked and killed by Celeste, who is also a werewolf, just like her mother. When Bob and Elsa arrive, they don't find Charles in his room, and Elsa also notices that the manuscripts that Charles wrote for his book on Marie Latour are burning in a fire. After not being able to find Charles, Bob and Elsa finally contact the police and later find the dead body of Charles Morris. The officer interrogates Elsa and Bob, and Elsa reveals that Morris might have been killed by a werewolf, but the officer discredits her claims and leaves. Later, the police find fingerprints inside the secret basement and sends it for testing. The officer suspected Elsa of being the murderer, but the fingerprints didn't match, so the officer decides to dig deeper into the matter. On the other side, Bob and Elsa are on their own mission to find Charles' murderer. Later that night, the janitor enters the museum and destroys the evidence gathered by Bob and Elsa, but he accidentally leaves a handprint on the door, allowing the police to track him. So the janitor meets Celeste and her tribe members and claims that the police won't find him. But Celeste is not willing to take any chances and decides to hunt down and kill the janitor. Since the janitor was dead, the police no longer have any leads for the case. Thus, they decide to interrogate Celeste and the gypsy tribe because they are the last people to see the janitor alive. But Celeste claims that the janitor was not a part of their tribe and was just a guest who requested their hospitality, but she turned him down and he left. And the next thing they knew was that the janitor was found dead. Now, since Celeste was here, Bob decided to interrogate her and even ask if Marie Latour was a part of their tribe, but before Celeste could answer anything, her friend acted as if she was about to faint, and the session was recessed. Later, Bob also visited a mortuary to find out if Marie Latour was part of the tribe. However, the mortuary manager displayed professionalism and claimed that he couldn't reveal such information. But Bob was not the kind of person to give up this easily. So, he decides to sneak inside the record room to search for any evidence. Around the same time, Celeste Latour arrives on the site and learns that Bob is looking for information on Marie. So she confronts Bob, and instead of being angry, she decides to charm the young man. Due to her mystical powers, she successfully brainwashes Bob into believing that the gypsy tribe had nothing to do with his father's murder. When Bob returns home, Elsa asks if he was able to find any information about Marie, but Bob claims that Marie and the tribe had nothing to do with his father's death, and he was wrong. This was extremely fishy for Elsa, so she decided to visit the museum, where she was confronted by Celeste Latour. Celeste tries to work her magic on Elsa and brainwashes her into believing that she is her sister. Celeste also prompts Elsa to confess that she committed Charles's murder. When Bob arrives in the museum to find Elsa, he also enters the secret basement where he meets Elsa, who is in a trance-like state. Elsa repeatedly confessed that she was the one who killed Charles. Upon hearing her claims, Bob called the police, and the police wanted to take Elsa with them, but Bob claimed that it was probably the work of Celeste. He reveals that Celeste had some magical powers, and she'd also made him believe that the gypsy had nothing to do with Charles's murder. So the police decided to investigate the hidden basement. Inside the basement, they were attacked by a wolf, and the police had to shoot the wolf in retaliation. After being shot, Celeste encounters Bob and Elsa and commands Elsa to kill Bob, but when Elsa does not listen to her commands, Celeste becomes a wolf and attacks Bob. She tried to kill Bob, but the officers arrived on site and shot down the wolf. After being shot, the wolf turns into Celeste, making everyone believe in the legend of the werewolf. A closer look on Celeste Latour, the female werewolf of the movie. Celeste Latour is portrayed as a villainess who kills people to protect the secrets of her ancestors, but we like to think of Celeste as more than just a villainess, an anti-heroine perhaps. Yes, she did commit some heinous murders, but that was only to protect her tribe and their secrets. When she was forced to kill the janitor, she cried like a baby in front of her friend, but since she was a princess, it was her duty to protect her people, and she even lost her life fulfilling her destiny. Although it was portrayed that Celeste tried to charm Bob to brainwash him, we think that she genuinely liked the young man. This was evident from her conversation with Elsa, where she revealed that she was forbidden to love a man and had to live secluded from men and humans alike. This made us think that Celeste Latour is just a misunderstood character and is a tragic heroine. Although she met her demise at the end of the movie, it would have been better if she was alive and probably made a return in a sequel of the movie. Overall, Nina Foch was the highlight of the movie, and even though she didn't receive much screen time, she definitely outshone everyone with her brilliant performance. Marvelous verdict. There are two kinds of werewolf movies. The first is where the human transforms into a half human and a half wolf, and the second is where the human completely transforms into a wolf. Although most people love the former, we think the latter is just purely misunderstood. Considering the time this movie was released, The Cry of the Werewolf was one of the few movies that didn't fall into a template and tried something new. However, most people were already fans of The Wolfman, released in 1941, and didn't like this movie. Cry of the Werewolf's unique approach to werewolf movies was definitely commendable, but they failed in their execution of the story. The story was completely linear and didn't have any major twists and turns to hook the viewer till the end. However, we would urge you to definitely check out this movie. It's only an hour long and would still make for a good viewing experience. With that being said, if you liked our content, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.